Hello everybody, Dave Neal here, stand-up comic, host of Bachelor Nation News. Happy Friday, last video of the day, unless there's any breaking news, and there hasn't been any in a while. But we've got Jesse Palmer talking to incredible podcast host Becca Kufrin and Michelle Young about this upcoming season of The Bachelor, premiering January 23rd, being the most emotional season ever. He kind of implies, or says right out, we know we got the note that there was a little too much drama, so let's get back to love-making, baby. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals if you want some lovemaking of the Instagram variety. Patreon.com/Dave Neal for behind-the-scenes content. You can see which Bachelor alumni I'm collaborating with. I've got that on today's Patreon. Go check that out. And also Bachelor Rush Hour for your behind-the-scenes content. Bachelor Rush Hour is every day's podcast. Every afternoon, I put together Bachelor clips and I put them in Bachelor Rush Hour, the podcast, including today. I'm going to share an interview I had with Jess Ambrose from Your Mom and Dad pod. Let's play a reel they just dropped here. Oh, this is okay. I can't play the audio because this is licensed content. But their first episode of her new podcast, which is like a takeoff from the Chatty Broads podcast, has Kenny and Mari and did I pronounce that right? Mari, Deandra, and Elise. It's got a whole bunch of people in there. And Joe Park, Ivan. So you can go check that whole thing out. I talked with Jess yesterday. The full audio is going to be up in like 2 hours on today's podcast, but here's a quick clip.
But I love, like I said, conversation to me is the number one, and I love creativity. And so the fact that people listen, it just means everything to me. So I want to make sure if I'm doing it well. And I'm
doing it well. Okay, so there she is. Check out that full interview on today's episode of Bachelor Rush Hour. All right, let's get into it. Jesse teases Zach's season of The Bachelor on award-winning podcast Bachelor Happy Hour. I always have to check and see what the name of this is. Have a listen.
Too much away. Can you give us a little teaser about what to expect from Zach's upcoming season?
What to expect when expecting drama?
Yeah. I would say that Zach's season is a bit of a throwback season in the sense that this is really...
For fantasy suites, they want hairy bushes. We're throwing it back to the 70s, folks.
About the love story. It's not so much about the drama. And I know in some past seasons, drama takes over. And on every season of Bachelor, there is going to be drama. That's just something you can't avoid. Mm-hmm. But this season really is less about that. And it's really more about the love story and about Zach trying to find his person. He's really, really intentional. I think one of the things that I was so impressed with watching Zach is that he really made a point to talk to everybody. And I know, when I was the Bachelor, group date, rose ceremony. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll talk to everybody. And then things happen and there's drama and someone, can I steal you for a second? And all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I've only spoken to literally half the people. No wonder everybody's upset. Zach made a point of getting time with every single woman, virtually every day. There may be one or two that he didn't, but he was really intent on that. I think part of that is probably because of his experience on Rachel's season. He had a lot of time taken away because of a lot of stuff that happened. But I think a lot of that is really Zach and sort of kind of what he wants to do.
Michelle looks like she's waiting. Michelle looks like she's waiting for an Amazon delivery.
That is probably because of his experience on Rachel's season. He had a lot of time taken away because of a lot of stuff that happened. But I think a lot of that is really Zach and sort of kind of what he wants to do. Also,
maybe there's like a hot guy shirtless mowing the lawn outside.
So this is easily the most emotional season that I've hosted. Not even close.
More so than Clayton's?
All right, so boy, here's the deal. So again, I don't blame Becca, but it's like Becca's going at a 9 out of 10 and Michelle's at a 7. So Michelle tries to interject and Becca's too quick, but Michelle does get a word in.
He wants to do. Also, this is easily the most emotional season that I've hosted. Not even close.
More so than Clayton's?
Can you tease why?
And then we have Michelle. Breaking news. Michelle gets a word in, folks. Breaking news.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, I want you to explain how you see that, because when I sit over here and think about emotion, or even as a viewer, a lot of times we mistake emotion as it's not a dramatic season unless everybody's crying.
Yeah, remind me when I start my own like podcast in my barn that I'm building to not have a window, because I would do what Michelle's doing. Like if I'm in an interview and someone's walking by, I'm like, oh, what are they doing? You know.
I'm not a big crier. And so there are a lot of times where I'll be really hurting and I'll use my words, but that's not emotion because you're not like outwardly crying.
Expressing emotion.
It. So would you say when you're talking about it's the most emotional season, is it because of the things that happen and it triggers the viewer's heartstrings? Or is it because there's a lot of crying emotion? Like emotion, how so?
So I think it's a lot of expressive emotion.
And by the way, Jesse said the most emotion he's seen as host. He's only hosted several seasons.
I think the biggest reason why, and more than Paradise, and I'm not kidding, by the way.
Whoa.
I think the thing that, going back to night one, I remember watching the women get out of the limo, and it was a first for me in the sense that it was the most I've ever seen of people getting out of the limo, walking up to the lead and saying, I'm so happy it's you. I'm here for you. When I found out you were the Bachelor, I decided I wanted to come and do this. I didn't experience that with Clayton, obviously, because no one had seen Clayton on TV before we started filming his, right, Michelle?
By the way, peep Jesse's nice white and gray hairs on his chin. He's a good-looking guy.
Well, your season hadn't yet aired. So a lot of the women got out of and they had never seen Clayton before in their lives. These women, I think, were very emotionally invested and hopeful of finding love with Zach. And also, Zach is an extremely emotional bachelor. He's a very emotional man. And he's expressive. Zach cries a lot. And
this is Jesse's trying to sell everyone on Bachelor 2023 like you try to sell your used car on Craigslist. Listen, this car, it's going to get you where you need to go. It's emotional. The check engine light's on, but the wheels work. The paint's okay. There's a moldy smell, but that's because it's been crying a lot because it's emotional.
But it's because he has such a big heart. And he genuinely cares about people's feelings and his impact and his actions and how that affects people.
Yeah.
The hardest part of this whole thing for Zach was, I was saying to you, is goodbyes.
Yeah.
When he says goodbye to people, it breaks him. It really, really does.
Yeah.
And so,
Jesse, you're gonna love this season. Zach is broken.
This season for me, from just the emotion,
just like my Toyota Tercel, you can buy for $2,900.
It's not because of drama or backstabbing or things that are happening behind the scenes. It's really because of the love and sort of the pursuit of that. And the relationships that he forms, to me, is something that really stands out.
Okay, well, we're excited to see that. And let's go to this next clip. Jesse is more than a host. Let's see what else he is.
So one thing, I mean, you said yes to being the host, but the role requires a lot more guidance than maybe you initially expected, right? Like, you're not only just kicking off the show and like setting the baseline or the storylines for these people to fall in love, but like you're also a support system for the leads and some contestants. Do you feel like, okay, this is a two-part question. Do you feel like when you were the Bachelor that you still had that same support structure, or did you go into this knowing like you maybe had lacked some things when you were the lead and you wanted to be able to give more to the leads and contestants when you became host?
That's a great.
I think that's a one-part question. It's just an either or question.
Great questions.
Or is it two-part?
I think a lot of it is really unique and individual to the lead, to you, Becca, to Michelle, and sort of what you felt you needed or wanted. And that's certainly how I felt too. I didn't ask for a lot of guidance on mine. And I think part of that was because the show was new, and that role hadn't really clearly been defined. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to, if I should, what things, and so, I think what I learned is Clayton was a very different Bachelor than Zach. And so both need different things.
Yeah.
One thing I've always really tried to be careful of, I still try to make this a priority. I just don't want to interject myself and make it about me. This
is why I would be a bad host. I would 100% make it about me. I'd have the soundboard going. I'd be interrupting dates with bits. No, it would be horrible.
I think, here's what I think, here's what I think. Totally. I'm always going to be so happy to give my advice, my help. Not saying it's going to be the right answer if it's asked for, right? Or if I feel like it's warranted and needed. And like there was a moment on Rachel's season where she was really down when we were in Bruges, and I went and spoke to her sort of privately in her on the boat. And just because she needed, I felt like she needed someone to talk to.
By the way, this might be crossing the lines, but if there was any fan fiction like on YouPorn, I would love to see a host of the show goes to, and again, this wouldn't work. He's married and all that, but like host of a dating show goes to console the lead, and then they end up falling in love. But by falling in love, I mean they bump Harrison's.
Yeah.
And so with Zach, you know, I feel like you're always wearing different hats with each lead. Zach was someone I learned pretty quickly that he needs support. And he's someone who has amazing intentions. The last thing Zach ever wants to do is hurt anybody's feelings. And I know we say that about a lot of people. Zach takes goodbyes very hard, very tough. And there were some moments, I think, during this season.
I do the same thing.
Where
I'd be a mess.
He had eliminated someone or sent someone home, and he got really emotional. And the weight of the moment really hit him. And there was a lot of times where I think in the past, it's like, all right, rose ceremony, everybody's done, off we go. And we'll get ready for the next day. You really had to sort of wait around and be there for him. Sometimes on camera, but other times just to stick around and be there for him, to talk to him off camera and be like, hey man, are you doing okay?
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So, you know, it's, I think doing this job, there's a lot of different things you have to do. But I think so much of it depends on who the person is and what it is they need or what it is they want. But one thing I know is I don't ever want to push myself on them if they decide they don't need it or want it.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Tim Hortons Coffee. For whenever you fall asleep while watching the Bachelor Happy Hour podcast, have some Tim Hortons Coffee. Good grief. I know they're trying their best. It's the off season. We're barrel scraping, baby. All right. More content coming your way on the Bachelor podcast, Bachelor Rush Hour, where I give you guys all the extra news nobody asked for. So I'll be over there. Check me out, Bachelor Rush Hour, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can see my extra conversation I did. It's going to be a longer one today. You can watch it or listen to it over the weekend. My conversation with Jess Ambrose will be aired there, and we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good weekend, everybody.